just 10 days before the birth of my third child, a single photo on my husband's phone exposed a dark, secret double life he had been living for 2 years. Now, that mysterious woman is threatening me, warning stay out of my way. The trap for your destruction is already set. But why would a man burn down a loving marriage to weave such a twisted web of lies? Who is this manipulative woman driving him into addiction and forcing him to liquidate our entire life savings? And when your own in-laws push you toward the edge of suicide, where does this nightmare end? In death or in freedom? Hi everyone, this is Sneha. Stay with me as we uncover the shocking details of this true story. The house was quiet, that specific kind of heavy, insulated quiet you only get in Toronto during the dead of winter, where the snow piled up against the windows acts like a second layer of soundproofing. Inside, the thermostat was set to 72 degrees, but as I sat there on the edge of our king-sized bed, a chill was starting to bloom in the centre of my chest that had nothing to do with the weather outside. I was huge. That's the only way to describe it. My ankles were swollen, disappearing into my socks, and my belly felt tight, like a drum skin stretched to its limit. 10 days. The doctors had said 10 days until the due date. This was our third, the final piece of the puzzle to complete the picture of the perfect suburban life John and I had built since 2015, or at least the picture I thought we were building. John was in the shower. I could hear the rhythmic thrum of the water hitting the tiles in the ensuite bathroom, the faint hum of him singing something off key. It was a domestic sound, one that usually made me smile. It was the sound of a husband, a father, washing off the day's work to come back to his wife. But that night, the sound felt distant, like it was coming from a different reality. His phone was sitting on the nightstand. It wasn't buzzing. It wasn't ringing. It was just lying there, face up, charging. In a marriage like ours, or what I believed ours was, phones weren't landmines. They were just objects. I didn't have a reason to snoop. I wasn't the jealous type. We had passwords, sure, but they were shared out of necessity, not monitored out of suspicion. And I needed to check the time, but my own phone was buried somewhere under a pile of laundry on the chair. So I reached over. My hand felt heavy. Everything felt heavy those last few days of pregnancy. I tapped the screen. The background was a picture of our two older kids smiling in the park last autumn. Innocence, pure, unfiltered innocence, staring back at me. I swiped up, entered the passcode, his birthday, and the screen unlocked. I didn't intend to open the gallery. I really didn't. I think I was looking for the weather app, checking to see if the snowstorm was going to clear up before my doctor's appointment tomorrow. But my thumb slipped, or maybe it was fate, or maybe it was some subconscious alarm bell that had been ringing in the back of my mind for months that I had chosen to ignore. The Photos app opened and time stopped. You know how people say your life flashes before your eyes when you die? It's not like that when your heart breaks. It's slower. It's a frame by frame deconstruction of your reality. The most recent photo wasn't of me. It wasn't of our kids. It wasn't a screenshot of a meme or a picture of a receipt. It was a selfie. John was smiling, not the tired, polite smile he gave me across the dinner table these days. And this was a real smile. A dazzling, youthful, reckless smile I hadn't seen in years. And pressed against his cheek was a woman. She wasn't a stranger. My breath hitched in my throat, a sharp physical pain that made the baby kick hard against my ribs. I knew that face. I knew those eyes. It was Jessica, the high school crush, the one that got away. My mind violently rewound to the beginning of our story. I remembered how John used to talk about her. Back then, he wanted her. He chased her, but she had rejected him. Her family had rejected him, and the timing was all wrong. He was young, heartbroken, and vulnerable. And then he found me. I was the one who healed him. I was the one who stood by him when his family pushed back against our marriage. We fought for us. We defied the odds. We built a life. I thought Jessica was a closed chapter, a dusty old book left on a shelf in a house we moved out of years ago. But looking at this screen, the book wasn't closed. It was being rewritten. My fingers trembled as I scrolled up. It wasn't just one picture. It was a cascade of them. There they were at a restaurant. I checked the date 2 weeks ago, the night John said he had to work late for a client meeting. There they were in a car, holding hands. There was a video. I didn't want to play it, but I couldn't stop myself. I pressed play, turning the volume all the way down so the sound wouldn't carry over the noise of the shower. In the video, they were laughing. It was intimate. It was comfortable. It wasn't the awkwardness of a fling. It was the familiarity of a marriage. They looked like a couple. They looked like us. I kept scrolling deeper into the timeline. 1 month ago, 6 months ago, 1 year, 2 years. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. 2 years. For 2 years, while I was raising our children, while I was planning our future, while I was carrying his child inside me right now, he had been living a parallel life. He hadn't just cheated, he had built an entire second existence. I saw photos of them with her family. Her mother, a woman I knew had a reputation for being difficult, was smiling at John in one of the pictures. They were at a dinner table. It looked like a celebration. They had integrated him back into their lives. I felt bile rise in my throat. This wasn't just lust. This was a conspiracy. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The nights he was too tired to talk. The weekends he spent fixing up a friend's property. The subtle changes in his mood, the irritability, the distant stares, the way he would recoil slightly when I touched him. I had blamed it on stress. I blamed it on the economy. I blamed it on the pressure of having a third baby. I had blamed myself. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought I was too pregnant, too tired, too boring. But it was never me. It was her. I looked at Jessica's face in the photos. She looked triumphant. There was a smugness in her smile, a possessiveness in the way her hand rested on his chest. She knew. She had to know. You don't date a man for 2 years without knowing he has a wife and 2 kids and a third on the way. She knew, and she didn't care. I remembered something John had told me vaguely a few years ago, that Jessica had been married 3 times, 3 divorces. He had painted her as a victim of bad luck, a fragile woman who just needed a friend. I'm just helping her out, Sarah, he would have said if I asked. She has nobody helping her out. I scrolled to a screenshot of a text message thread. It was buried between the photos. I can't wait for you to leave her, the message from Jessica read. And John's reply, soon. Just let the baby come. Once the baby is here, I'll figure it out. I love you. I dropped the phone on the bed. It bounced softly on the duvet, landing face down, hiding its secrets again. The shower water stopped. The sudden silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the pipes rattling as the pressure settled. I could hear my own heart hammering against my eardrums, a frantic, erratic rhythm that felt like it was going to crack my ribs open. He was coming out. I sat there frozen. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together over my belly. Inside me, our son moved again, a slow, rolling turn. He was alive. He was innocent. He had no idea that the world he was about to enter had just shattered into a million jagged pieces. The bathroom door handle turned. The click of the latch echoed in the silent bedroom like a gunshot. John stepped out, a towel wrapped around his waist, steam billowing out behind him. He looked fresh, clean. He rubbed a smaller towel through his damp hair and looked up at me. Hey, he said, his voice casual. Warm, the voice of the man I loved. You okay? You look a little pale. He walked over to the dresser, grabbing a t-shirt. He didn't know. He didn't know that I had seen the ghosts in his machine. He didn't know that the version of his wife who trusted him blindly had died in the last 5 minutes. I looked at him, really looked at him. I tried to find the monster behind those familiar brown eyes, but he just looked like John. He looked like the father of my children, and that was the scariest part. The deception was seamless. He could smile at me, ask about my day, maybe even kiss my forehead, all while carrying the weight of a 2-year betrayal in his pocket. Sarah? He asked again, pausing with the shirt halfway over his head. Honey, is it the baby? Do we need to go to the hospital? I swallowed hard, forcing the lump in my throat down. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I was 10 days away from giving birth. I was vulnerable. I was weak. If I screamed now, if I threw the phone at him, he would spin it. He would lie. He would gaslight me. I needed to be smarter. I needed to breathe. But as I looked at the phone lying innocently on the bedspread between us, I knew one thing for certain. The man standing in front of me wasn't my husband anymore. He was a stranger who had been sleeping in my bed. No, I whispered, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. I'm just tired, John, just really tired. He smiled, that sympathetic practice smile. I ate some rest. I'll get you some water. As he turned his back to walk toward the kitchen, I grabbed his phone. My fingers curled around the cold metal. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't have a plan, but I knew the war had started. The silence of the house returned, but it wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a tomb, and in that silence I realised that the nightmare wasn't just beginning. It had been happening for 2 years. I had just finally woken up. The glass of water trembled in John's hand just a fraction of an inch, a micro tremor. If I hadn't been staring at him with the intensity of a sniper waiting to take a shot, I would have missed it. He had walked back into the bedroom, that easy domestic smile plastered on his face, offering me hydration like a peace offering for a war he didn't know had started. But the moment his eyes landed on his phone, resting not on the nightstand where he left it, but in the centre of the duvet, screen facing up, glowing with the incriminating evidence of his betrayal, the smile didn't just fade, it evaporated. For a second, the only sound in the room was the hum of the heater and the terrifyingly loud thumping of my own heart. "Sarah," he said. His voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by a tight, guarded frequency. He set the glass down on the dresser a little too hard. Water sloshed over the rim. "Why do you have my phone?" Oh, I didn't answer immediately. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton. I reached out and tapped the screen. The light had dimmed, but a single tap brought it back to life. The photo, that damned photo. John's reckless smile, Jessica's possessive cheek pressed against his. "Who is she, John?" I asked. My voice wasn't a scream. It was a whisper, a broken, jagged thing. "And don't you dare tell me she's a client. Don't you dare tell me she's a friend." John stared at the image. I watched his brain working. I could see the gears turning behind his eyes, calculating, assessing the damage, looking for an exit route. He didn't drop to his knees. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He didn't cry. Instead, he let out a sigh, a long, frustrated exhale, as if I were the one being unreasonable, as if I were the one inconveniencing him. "You went through my gallery," he said accusingly. He walked over and snatched the phone from the bed. "I leave my phone alone for 5 minutes and you're snooping. Is this what we've become?" The audacity hit me like a slap. I struggled to sit up straighter, fighting the weight of my belly. "Don't turn this on me. I saw the dates, John. 2 years. You've been seeing her for 2 years. He froze. The invasion of privacy card hadn't worked. He knew he couldn't deny the timeline. The digital footprint was too deep. He rubbed his face with his hands, dragging his palms down his cheeks. When he looked at me again, his expression had softened into something that looked like pity. It was a mask I would come to learn well over the next few months. The mask of the martyr. "Sarah, look," he started, sitting on the edge of the bed, but not too close. "It's not what it looks like, okay? You're hyper-emotional right now. You're pregnant. You're seeing things through a lens of paranoia. I am seeing a picture of you kissing your high school ex-girlfriend." I screamed. The baby kicked hard, a protest against the sudden spike in cortisol. I winced, clutching my side. "She's in trouble, Sarah," John said. He said it with such conviction, such gravity, that for a split second I paused. "Jessica, she's had a hard life. You know that. She's been married 3 times, 3 divorces. She has no one. Her family turned their backs on her. She reached out to me because she was suicidal. She needed a friend." "A friend?" I laughed, a harsh, humourless sound. "Friends don't look at each other like that. Friends don't hide their relationship for 2 years. You lied to me every single day." "I didn't lie," he countered smoothly. "I omitted the truth to protect you. I knew you'd get like this. Jealous, irrational. I was just trying to help a human being who was on the edge, Sarah. That's who I am. I help people. Would you have preferred I let her kill herself?" It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was twisting the narrative so fast I was getting whiplash. He was taking his infidelity and repackaging it as charity. He was the hero saving a damsel in distress, and I was the shrewish wife standing in the way of his sainthood. "I saw the text, John," I spat out. "She wants you to leave me. You told her soon. You told her you love her." John flinched. That was the one thing he couldn't explain away with altruism. He stood up and paced the small space between the bed and the window. He looked trapped. "I said what I had to say to keep her stable," he lied. I knew it was a lie, but he delivered it with the confidence of a seasoned actor. "She's unstable, Sarah. If I tried to cut her off cold turkey, she'd do something drastic. I was de-escalating. I was trying to find a way out without anyone getting hurt." "Get out," I said. "Get out of this house. Go to her. If you're her saviour, go save her, but don't come back here." He stopped pacing. He turned to me and his face went hard. "I can't leave, Sarah, and you can't kick me out. Watch me." me. No, listen to me. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. It's complicated, more complicated than you think. What could possibly be more complicated than you cheating on your pregnant wife? He took a deep breath. He looked at me, then at my stomach, then back at my eyes. She's pregnant! The world tilted on its axis. The room spun. I actually grabbed the duvet to keep from falling off the bed, even though I was sitting down. What? The word was barely a breath. Jessica, he said, looking down at his feet now, feigning shame. She's pregnant. She says it's mine. I felt like I'd been hollowed out. I looked down at my own swollen belly. Inside me was a child, fully formed, waiting to meet his father. And somewhere across the city, that woman, that home wrecker, was carrying a failsafe, a biological anchor. You got her pregnant. Tears finally spilled over, hot, angry tears that burned my cheeks. How? How could you? It was a mistake, he said quickly. One night we were drinking. She was distraught. It just happened. But Sarah, listen to me. I don't believe it's mine. She's been with other guys. She's messy. She's using this to trap me. Then leave her. I screamed. If it's a trap, walk away. I can't. He threw his hands up. Not legally, not morally. If that baby is mine, I can't just abandon a child, Sarah. You, of all people, know I'm a good father. I can't walk away until I know for sure. He sat down next to me again, and this time he took my hand. I tried to pull away, but he held on tight. His grip was clammy. Here is the plan, he said, his voice urgent, desperate. I need you to be calm for our baby, for us. I have to play along with her for a little while longer, just until the baby is born. Once she gives birth, I'll demand a DNA test. If it's mine, I'll support the kid financially, but I'm done with her. If it's not mine, which I'm praying it isn't, I wash my hands of her forever. But right now, if I leave her, she'll come here. She'll cause a scene. She'll ruin everything. Do you want that stress right before you go into labour? He was weaponizing my pregnancy against me. He was holding my peace of mind hostage. You want me to let you date her? I asked, incredulous. While I'm giving birth to your son? No, not date. Manage. I need to manage her. I'm doing this for us, Sarah. I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. I was weak, but I love you. You are my wife. This is my family. Please don't throw 15 years away because I messed up once. Once? It was 2 years. It was thousands of texts. It was family dinners with her mother. But as I sat there feeling the baby turn inside me, a wave of exhaustion crashed over me so heavy I could barely keep my eyes open. I was trapped. Physically, I couldn't leave. I couldn't pack a bag and go to my parents' house. They were hours away and I was high risk. I had 2 other children sleeping down the hall and I had a mortgage. I had a life that was intertwined with his like the roots of an old tree. And I was scared, terrified. If I kicked him out now, who would drive me to the hospital? Who would watch the older kids? Who would pay the bills while I was on maternity leave? John saw the hesitation in my eyes. He saw the fear, and like a predator sensing a limp, he pounced. You're sick, Sarah, he whispered, stroking my hand. You've been unwell this whole pregnancy. Your hormones are all over the place. You're not thinking clearly. Let me handle this. Let me fix this mess. I promise you, once the baby is born, she is gone forever. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. His lips felt cold. Just 10 days, he murmured against my skin. Give me a little time. Focus on the baby. Focus on getting healthy. I'll take care of everything. I didn't push him away. I didn't scream. I just sat there numb, staring at the wall. I knew he was lying. Somewhere deep down in my gut, beneath the fear and the hormones, I knew. A man who lies for 2 years doesn't suddenly tell the truth in 5 minutes. But I was tired. God, I was so tired. Fine, I whispered. It was a surrender. A white flag waved over the ruins of my self-respect. But if you go to her, if you touch her, I won't, he promised. Here, I'm with you. He got up and turned off the lights, plunging the room into darkness. He climbed into bed beside me, pulling the duvet up. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. He fell asleep. He fell asleep. After dropping a bomb that destroyed my world and after confessing to a mistress and a potential illegitimate child, he was able to close his eyes and drift off. I lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The baby kicked again, harder this time. I realised then that John wasn't just a cheater. He was something far worse. He was a man who could compartmentalise his conscience, and he had created a reality where he could be a husband to me and a saviour to her, and he believed his own lies. He said Jessica was the ghost of his past, but as I lay next to the man I thought I knew, listening to the steady rhythm of his breath, I realised the real ghost was him, the John I loved, the John I married. He didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had. And now I was alone in the dark with a stranger stranger waiting for a child to be born into a war zone. Labour is a strange thing. It's a physical trauma that somehow erases the world outside the hospital room. For 12 hours, the universe shrank down to the rhythmic beeping of the monitor, the crushing pressure in my lower back, and the sterile smell of antiseptic. And John, he was there. That's the thing that messes with my head the most when I look back. He was right there holding my hand. He wiped the sweat from my forehead with a damp cloth. He counted my breaths. He looked into my eyes with what seemed like infinite tenderness and whispered, "You've got this, Sarah. You're strong. We're going to meet our son soon." If I hadn't seen the photos on his phone 10 days ago, I would have believed him. I would have believed that we were the perfect team. But even through the haze of epidural and exhaustion, a part of my brain remained detached, watching him like a spectator. Is this real? I wondered. Or is this just another performance? Is he playing the role of devoted husband because the audience, the nurses and doctors, is watching? Then the baby came, a boy, tiny, red-faced, screaming with a lung capacity that promised a stubborn personality. They placed him on my chest, skin to skin, and for a moment the darkness of the last 10 days evaporated. The rush of oxytocin was so powerful it felt like a drug. I looked up at John. He was crying. Real tears. He cut the cord, his hands shaking. "He's beautiful," John whispered, kissing the top of my head. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you." For 48 hours in that hospital recovery room, we existed in a bubble. John didn't check his phone. He didn't leave the room except to get coffee. He held our son like he was the most precious thing on earth. I allowed myself to hope. I thought maybe he meant it. Maybe seeing his son has snapped him out of it. Maybe the reality of this new life is stronger than the fantasy of his affair. I was an idiot. The mask didn't slip until we got home. It happened 3 days after we were discharged. I was sitting on the nursing glider in the nursery, struggling to get the baby to latch. My body was a wreck. Stitches, soreness, the profound exhaustion of a C-section recovery. The house was chaotic. The 2 older kids were running around downstairs, excited and loud. I heard the front door open and close. John had gone out for diapers 2 hours ago. The grocery store was 15 minutes away. He walked into the nursery. He wasn't holding diapers. He was holding a garment bag, his dry cleaning. And he smelled different, not like the hospital, not like sweat, not like us. He smelled like expensive perfume, her perfume, a cloying floral scent that clung to his jacket like a second skin. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the baby struggling in my arms. He walked straight to the closet and started packing a duffel bag. "John," I asked, wincing as I shifted my weight, "what are you doing? Did you get the diapers?" "I forgot," he said flatly. He didn't even turn around. He was throwing shirts into the bag, underwear, his toiletries kit. "You forgot?" The baby started to cry, sensing my rising panic. "John, where are you going?" He zipped the bag shut with a harsh metallic sound. He turned to face me, and the man who had cried tears of joy in the delivery room was gone. In his place stood someone cold, someone unrecognisable. His eyes were dead. "I'm going to Jessica's," he said. The air left the room. "What?" I whispered. "But you said you were just managing her. You said after the baby was born, you'd leave her. You promised." John laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a scoff filled with disdain. "I said what I had to say to get you through the delivery without you having a stroke, Sarah. You were hysterical. I needed you calm." "You lied?" "I did what was necessary," he corrected, his voice devoid of guilt. "Look, let's cut the crap. Jessica is pregnant. She's alone. She's scared. And unlike you, she doesn't have a support system. She doesn't have parents who will swoop in. She only has me. I just had surgery," I screamed, finding a reserve of strength I didn't know I had. "I have a 3-day-old infant in my arms. I need you." "You have your mum coming tomorrow," he dismissed, waving a hand. "You'll be fine. Jessica is in a bad place. She's threatening to hurt herself if I don't come tonight. I can't have that on my conscience." "And what about us?" I gestured to the room, to the crib, to the life we built. "What about your conscience regarding your wife and children?" He walked over to the door, leaning against the frame, looking down at me with a terrifyingly calm expression. "I'm not leaving you, Sarah. Stop being so dramatic. I'm just expanding. "I can't choose," he said, as if he were deciding between 2 dinner options. "I love you, but I love her too. We have a history. We have a bond you wouldn't understand. And now we're going to have a child. I'm not going to be an absentee father to that baby, just like I'm not abandoning this one. That's not how marriage works." I was shaking now, the baby crying harder. "You can't have 2 wives, John. This isn't the 1800s. It's illegal and it's sick." "It's only illegal if I marry her on paper," he said with a shrug. "Who cares about a piece of paper? In the eyes of God, or whatever, I'm committed to both of you. So, here's the deal. He checked his watch. He was actually checking his watch while destroying my life. I've rented an apartment for her downtown, the Spire condos. My jaw dropped. The Spire, that was one of the most expensive buildings in the city. How? How can you afford that? We just refinanced the house because you said money was tight. Don't worry about the money, he snapped, his eyes flashing with anger for the first time. I handle the finances. You just worry about the kids. I'm going to stay with her for a few days to get her settled. Then I'll come back here for a few days. We'll rotate. 2 days there, 2 days here. Maybe we can do weekends together eventually. Together. I felt like I was going to vomit. You think I'm going to hang out with your mistress? She's not a mistress, he corrected sharply. She's my partner. And if you want this marriage to work, if you want to keep living in this house and having your bills paid, you're going to accept it because I'm not leaving her. Period. He picked up his bag. So the ball is in your court, Sarah. You can stay, accept the new reality, and we can be a big, happy, unconventional family. Or you can leave, you can file for divorce, but good luck with that. You have no income. You have 3 kids under 6. Do you really want to drag us through court? Do you want to be a single mum living in a basement apartment somewhere? It was blackmail. Pure and simple. He knew exactly how vulnerable I was. He had timed this perfectly. He waited until the baby was born, until I was physically incapacitated, until I was drowning in postpartum hormones and exhaustion to drop the guillotine. You're a monster, I whispered. I'm a man doing his best, he said, and he actually believed it. I'll be back on Thursday. Don't wait up. He turned and walked out. I heard his footsteps go down the stairs. I heard the front door open. I heard the car start, the SUV we had bought together for family road trips, and then he was gone. I sat there in the silence of the nursery, the only sound, the soft, hiccuping cries of my son. I looked down at his tiny face. He looked so much like John. The pain that washed over me wasn't just emotional, it was physical. My C-section incision burned, my breasts ached, but the hole in my chest was the biggest wound. He hadn't just cheated, he had replaced me, or rather he had demoted me. I was no longer his wife, I was just one of his options. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. I googled the Spire condos Toronto rentals. The prices stared back at me. 2 bedrooms started at $3,500 a month. We didn't have that kind of money. John made a good salary, but with 3 kids and a mortgage, we were comfortable, not rich. $3,500 a month was insane. It was financial suicide. A cold dread started to creep up my spine, replacing the shock. If he was paying for that apartment and he was buying her expensive gifts and he was handling the finances, I opened my banking app. I tried to log into our joint savings account. Access denied. I frowned. Maybe I mistyped the password. I tried again. Access denied. Password incorrect. He had changed the passwords. I tried the credit card portal. Same thing. I tried the line of credit. Locked out. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of my grief. And I wasn't just a woman whose husband had left her for another woman. I was a woman whose husband had just walked out the door with the keys to our entire life. I remembered what he said about refinancing the house. He said it was for renovations and to consolidate debt. I had signed the papers without reading them thoroughly because I trusted him. I always trusted him. I realised then that the mask falling off wasn't just about Jessica. It was about everything. John wasn't just a cheater, he was a thief. And he had been planning this exit strategy or this expansion strategy for months. I looked at the window. It was snowing outside. The street lights flickered on. Somewhere in the city, John was walking into a luxury condo, greeting a woman who had helped him dismantle my life, probably kissing her, probably telling her how crazy and unreasonable I was being. And I was here, trapped in a house I might not even own anymore, with 3 children, 0 access to money, and a heart that had been ripped out of my chest and stomped on. I stopped crying. Tears were useless now. Tears were for wives who had husbands who made mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a war. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Okay, John. I looked down at my sleeping son. You think you have all the power, I said softly. You think I'm weak because I'm a mother. You think I'm trapped. I reached for the phone again, not to call him and not to beg. I dialed the one number he probably thought I would never call. His sister, my sister-in-law, Emily, the only one in that toxic family who had ever shown me a shredder of kindness, even though she was terrified of her mother. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello? Emily's voice was tentative. Emily, I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. I need you to tell me exactly what your brother has been doing, and don't you dare lie to me because I know about Jessica. There was a silence on the other end, a long, guilty silence. Silence. Oh God, Sarah, she whispered. You finally found out? Tell me, I said. Tell me everything. And as Emily started to speak, the floor beneath me fell away completely, because Jessica wasn't just a high school ex, and this wasn't just about love or lust. It was about something much darker. It's not just another woman, Sarah. Emily's voice trembled through the phone line. If it were just another woman, maybe he could come back from that, but it's not. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, ignoring the throbbing pain in my C-section incision as I paced the small nursery. The winter wind howled outside, rattling the window pane, but the chill I felt was entirely internal. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What else is there, Emily? Is he sick? Is he in trouble? He's sick, all right. She let out a sharp, jagged breath. Sarah, John is using heavy stuff. It started about 2 years ago, right around the time he reconnected with Jessica. She's not just a victim, like he says. She's part of that world. The parties, the late nights, the stuff that keeps you awake for 3 days straight and then makes you sleep like the dead for 3 more. The word drugs hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. Suddenly, the last 2 years snapped into focus like a camera lens, finally finding purchase. The work stress, the erratic moods, how he would be manic, bouncing off the walls with energy and grand ideas one day, and then comatose in our bedroom with the blackout curtains drawn for 48 hours straight the next. I had attributed it to depression. I had made excuses for him to his boss, to my parents, to our friends. John is just burned out, I'd say. He's working so hard for us. He wasn't working, he was crashing. What is he on? I asked, feeling a nausea that had nothing to do with postpartum recovery. Coke. Sometimes pills. I don't know the specifics, Sarah. I just know he's not John anymore, Emily sobbed. Mum knows she's been giving him money to pay off debts, but we all know it's going up his nose or into Jessica's pockets. That's why Mum hates you right now. It's easier for her to blame you for stressing him out than to admit her golden boy is a junkie. I hung up the phone. I couldn't listen to her apologise for her family's cowardice anymore. I stood in the middle of the nursery, the silence of the house pressing in on me. My husband wasn't just a cheater. He was an addict, and he was currently living in a luxury condo with his dealer girlfriend while I was here with 3 children. The money! The thought hit me like a physical blow. John had said he was handling the finances. He had locked me out of the online banking. If he was an addict... I didn't wait. I moved as fast as my recovering body would allow, heading straight for the basement. That's where John kept his home office, a room he had been fiercely protective of lately. Don't let the kids in there, Sarah. I have sensitive client files, he used to say. The door was locked. Of course it was. But John was arrogant. He was the kind of man who thought he was smarter than everyone else, which made him careless. I knew exactly where the spare key was, taped to the top of the door frame, and I reached up, my fingers brushing the dust, and found the cold metal. I unlocked the door and stepped into the smell of stale air and something else, something chemical, sweet and acrid. The room was a disaster. Papers were strewn everywhere. The sensitive client files were just piles of unopened mail. I sat down at his desk and started tearing open the envelopes. The first one was a credit card statement, a Visa card I didn't even know we had. Balance $24,500. Status overdue. I scanned the transactions. LCBO liquor store $400. Holt Renfrew luxury department store $1,200. The Spire concierge $500. Cash advance $800. Cash advance $1,000. Cash advance $1,000. He was bleeding us dry. I opened the next envelope, a letter from the bank. Notice of missed mortgage payment. My heart stopped. We had never missed a mortgage payment. We had automatic withdrawals set up, and I grabbed the file folder labelled house. Inside were the refinancing papers we had signed 6 months ago. He had told me we were taking out $50,000 for renovations and to pad our savings for the baby. I looked at the actual numbers on the document, the ones I had glossed over because I was chasing a toddler while signing them. He hadn't taken out $50,000. He had taken out $200,000. He had stripped almost every cent of equity we had in the house. Oh my God, I whispered, my hand covering my mouth. Where is it? Where is the money? I frantically searched the desk drawers. I found a bank statement from his personal account, the one he used for his business expenses. The account balance was $42.18. $200,000 gone in 6 months. It wasn't just the apartment rent. It wasn't just the drugs. It was her. I found receipts for jewellery, a Cartier bracelet, a trip to a spa in Niagara-on-the-Lake, designer handbags. He was living a millionaire's lifestyle on a middle-class salary. burning through our future to keep his high-maintenance mistress happy. But then I found something that made the financial ruin seem almost trivial. In the bottom drawer, buried under a stack of old tax returns, was a small velvet bag. I opened it. Inside was a glass pipe, a lighter, and a small baggie with white residue. I stared at it. This was in my house. In the house where my children played. In the house where my 5-year-old liked to play hide and seek. If he had found this, if he had put this in his mouth, a wave of rage so pure and hot washed over me that it burned away the fear. John wasn't just a bad husband. He was a danger. He was a liability. He had exposed us to criminal activity. He had stolen our money. He had lied about our security. I remembered the way he looked at me in the hospital. I'll take care of everything, Sarah. He wasn't taking care of anything. He was an arsonist, and he was burning our life to the ground while smiling and telling me it was just a little smoke. I grabbed my phone and took pictures. I took pictures of the pipe, the baggie, the overdue notices, the credit card statement showing the cash advances, the refinancing documents. I needed proof because when he came back, and I knew he would come back when the money ran out or when Jessica got bored of him, he would lie. He would gaslight me. He would say I was crazy. He would say the bank made a mistake. He would say the pipe belonged to a friend. I couldn't let him do that anymore. Suddenly, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My stomach dropped. It was Thursday. He said he would be back on Thursday. I scrambled to put the papers back. I shoved the velvet bag back into the drawer. I locked the door and pocketed the key. I made it to the kitchen just as the front door opened. John walked in. He looked terrible. His skin was grey, his eyes were bloodshot and sunken, and he had a nervous, twitchy energy about him, and he hadn't slept. I could tell instantly. He was coming down. Hey, he said, his voice raspy. He dropped his keys on the counter. He didn't ask about the baby. He didn't ask about me. He walked straight to the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water, downing half of it in one gulp. "You're early," I said, leaning against the counter for support. My legs felt weak. "Yeah, well, Jessica needed some space," he muttered, wiping his mouth. "She's hormonal. It's a lot." He looked at me, really looked at me, and frowned. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're analysing me." "Stop it. It's annoying." He rubbed his temples. "I have a migraine. I'm going to go lie down. Don't let the kids wake me up. I need to sleep for like 2 days." He started to walk past me toward the stairs. The old Sarah would have let him go. The old Sarah would have made sure the house was quiet so poor, tired daddy could rest. The old Sarah would have worried that he was working too hard. But the Sarah standing in the kitchen now had seen the bank statements. She had seen the pipe. "John," I said. He stopped, his hand on the banister, but didn't turn around. "What? Did you pay the mortgage this month?" He stiffened. His shoulders went up towards his ears. "Yes, of course I did." "Why?" "Because we got a letter," I lied. "It looked like a late notice." He turned around slowly. His eyes were narrow, dangerous. "I told you I handle the finances, Sarah. It's probably a clerical error. The bank makes mistakes all the time. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. Don't worry your pretty little head." He was patronising me while he was robbing me. "And the $200,000 from the refinance?" I asked, my voice steady. "Is that a clerical error too?" The colour drained from his face. For a second, he looked like a cornered animal. Where did you... "I know, John," I said, stepping forward. "I know about the money. I know about the credit cards. And I know why you need to sleep for 2 days. It's not a migraine. It's the come down." Silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. Then John laughed. It was a manic, broken sound. "You think you know everything, don't you?" He sneered, stepping towards me, and he smelled like sweat and chemicals. "You think you're so smart. You have no idea what pressure I'm under. You have no idea what it takes to keep this lifestyle going." "This lifestyle," I gestured to the modest kitchen. "We are broke, John. You spent it all on her, on drugs." "I spent it on happiness," he shouted, slamming his hand on the counter. I flinched. "I spent it trying to feel something other than the misery of this boring, suffocating life. You don't understand me. Jessica understands me. She knows what I need." "Then go to her," I said, pointing at the door. "Go back to the spire. Go back to your happiness. But don't you dare go upstairs and sleep in the bed that I pay for. Well, used to pay for before you stole my equity." He looked at me with pure hatred. "This is my house. My name is on the deed. And the bank is about to take it," I shot back. He stared at me for a long moment, his chest heaving. Then the anger seemed to drain out of him, replaced by that overwhelming exhaustion. The drugs were wearing off fast. He was crashing hard. "I'm too tired for this," he mumbled, his speech slurring slightly. "We'll talk later. I need to sleep." He turned and trudged up the stairs. He didn't care that I knew. He didn't care that we were bankrupt. The addiction was the only thing that mattered shattered. The need to shut down his brain was stronger than the need to save his marriage. I listened to his heavy footsteps, then the slam of the bedroom door. I was alone in the kitchen again. But this time I wasn't just sad. I was terrified because I realised that the man upstairs wasn't going to fix this. He wasn't going to get a job and pay back the money. He wasn't going to go to rehab. He was going to drag us all down with him. I looked at the phone in my hand. I had the pictures. I had the proof. But then my phone buzzed. A text message. It wasn't from John. It wasn't from Emily. It was from an unknown number. I opened it. There was no text, just an image. It was a photo of me taken from a distance. I was standing in my driveway checking the mail earlier that day, and then a second message popped up. You look tired, Sarah. Maybe you should rest. Stop digging. You might not like what you find at the bottom of the hole. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the tile floor. Jessica. She wasn't just watching John, she was watching me. The phone screen went black, but the image of me standing in my own driveway, unaware and vulnerable, was burned into my retinas. The text message from the unknown number from her wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. Stop digging. You might not like what you find at the bottom of the hole. I couldn't stay in the house. Not with John comatose upstairs, sleeping off a cocaine bender, and his mistress stalking me from the shadows. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every rustle of the wind outside sounded like someone trying to pry open a window. I packed the kids into the car in a frenzy. My hands shook so badly I could barely buckle the baby into his car seat. I threw a few days' worth of clothes into a bag, grabbed the folder of financial documents, the evidence of John's theft, and backed out of the driveway. I didn't know where to go. My parents were in Florida for the winter. My friends, I had isolated myself from them over the last 2 years, hiding the cracks in my marriage. I was too ashamed to show up on their doorsteps with 3 crying kids and a story about drugs and mistresses. So I drove to the one place I thought foolishly would offer sanctuary. John's parents. My in-laws lived in a sprawling, pristine house in Oakville. Manicured lawns, heated driveway, a wreath on the door that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. For years, I had tried to fit into their mould. I had endured their passive-aggressive comments about my cooking, my career, my parenting style. I thought it was just standard mother-in-law friction. I didn't realise it was hatred until that night. And when I arrived, the house was warm and smelled of cinnamon and expensive potpourri. My mother-in-law, Linda, opened the door. She looked at my dishevelled hair, the dark circles under my eyes, and the 3 fussy children behind me, and her lip curled just slightly. Sarah, she said, not stepping aside to let me in immediately. We weren't expecting you. Is John with you? John is passed out at home, I said, pushing past her. I didn't have the energy for pleasantries. We need to talk. All of you. I herded the kids into the den and put on a movie to distract them. Then I walked into the kitchen. Linda was there, along with 3 of John's 5 sisters, Karen, Lisa and Rachel. They were sitting around the island, drinking wine and looking like a page out of a catalogue. They stopped talking when I walked in. The silence was thick, heavy and cold. I need help, I said, placing the folder on the marble countertop. John is in trouble. Serious trouble. Linda took a sip of her Chardonnay. Trouble? Or is this another one of your exaggerations? John tells us you've been difficult lately, hormonal. He's on drugs, Linda, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. The sisters exchanged glances, not looks of shock, looks of annoyance. Excuse me? Karen asked, raising an eyebrow. I opened the folder. I spread the photos on the counter. The picture of the crack pipe, the baggie, the bank statements showing the withdrawals, the credit card debt. He spent over $200,000 in 6 months, I said, my voice trembling. He drained our equity. He's maxed out the cards. And he's doing cocaine. I found this pipe in his desk today. I waited for the gasp. I waited for the mother's instinct to kick in, for Linda to grab her keys and drive to her son and to demand he get help. I waited for the sisters to comfort me, the victim of this wreckage. Instead, Linda picked up the photo of the pipe with 2 fingers as if it were a dirty tissue and dropped it back on the counter. Well, she said, looking at me with eyes that were as cold as ice. I suppose he has to cope somehow. I blinked. Cope? He's an addict. He's destroying his family. He's under a lot of pressure, Sarah, Lisa chimed in, swirling her wine. He has a wife who is constantly nagging him. 3 kids screaming all the time, a job that demands everything from him. Maybe if he had a peaceful home life, he wouldn't need release. My jaw dropped. Are you blaming me for his drug addiction? We're just saying, Rachel added, leaning forward, that John was fine before he married you. He was happy. He was successful. Ever since he's been with you, he's been stressed. Maybe you're the trigger. And the woman, I asked, pointing to the text message on my phone. What about Jessica, the mistress he's been keeping for 2 years, the one he's renting a luxury condo for with our money? Is she my fault too? I expected them to deny it. I expected them to say, no, John would never. But Linda sighed, a long, weary sound. We know about Jessica. The room spun. You know, she's a sweet girl, Linda said. She's had a hard life. John cares about her. She listens to him. She doesn't judge him. She's a homewrecker, I screamed. She's helping him spend your grandchildren's college fund on drugs. She makes him happy, Karen said sharply. Unlike you. Look at you, Sarah. You're a mess. You're hysterical. You've let yourself go. Is it any wonder he looked elsewhere? Men have needs. If they aren't getting what they need at home, they find it outside. That's just nature. I looked around the circle of faces. These women were his family. They were supposed to be the moral compass, but they weren't just enabling him, they were encouraging him. They preferred the mistress because the mistress was a secret they could control, whereas I was the wife who demanded accountability. He's stealing from us, I said, tears streaming down my face now. He's stealing from you too, Linda. He told me you gave him money for debts. He spent it on coke. It's his inheritance anyway, Linda shrugged. If he spends it now or later, what's the difference? At least he's enjoying himself. I felt like I'd stepped into the twilight zone. This wasn't denial. This was malice. They hated me so much that they were willing to watch their son and brother self-destruct just to prove that I was a failure as a wife. I can't believe this, I whispered. I'm leaving. I'm taking the kids and I'm filing for divorce. Divorce? Lisa laughed. It was a cruel, high-pitched sound. Good luck with that. You have no money. John told us you're broke. How are you going to hire a lawyer? We'll make sure John gets full custody, Karen added smoothly. We have the money for the best lawyers in Toronto. We'll paint you as unstable, postpartum depression, hysterical. We'll tell the judge you abandoned the marital home. You'll never see those kids again. You wouldn't? I gasped. Oh, we would, Linda said softly. Those are my grandchildren. I won't let a woman like you raise them. I backed away toward the door. I felt sick, physically ill. I had walked into the lion's den expecting protection, and instead they were tearing me apart. You know, Rachel said, standing up and walking over to me. She was the youngest, the one I used to go shopping with. She looked me up and down with disgust. John is so unhappy, Sarah. He tells us he feels trapped. He says he wishes he could just start over. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper so the kids in the other room wouldn't hear. If I were you, she hissed, and I had ruined a man's life this badly. If I had turned a good man into a drug addict, I don't know if I could live with myself. I stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying, she smiled a dead shark-like smile, that maybe everyone would be better off if you just weren't here. It would solve all the problems, wouldn't it? John could be with Jessica. The kids would have us. You wouldn't have to struggle anymore. The air left my lungs. She was telling me to kill myself. My sister-in-law, standing in her mother's designer kitchen, holding a glass of Pinot Grigio, was suggesting that I commit suicide to make her brother's life easier. The cruelty was so absolute, so suffocating that for a second I actually felt dizzy. I remembered the nights I sat alone crying while John was out. I remembered the feeling of worthlessness. They were tapping into that dark reserve of postpartum depression, trying to push me over the edge. You are evil, I whispered. You are all evil. We're protective, Linda corrected. Now take your screaming children and get out of my house. You're upsetting the vibe. I grabbed the car keys. I ran to the den. Kids, let's go now. But Mom, the movie isn't over, my 5-year-old protested. We are leaving, I yelled, snatching the baby carrier. I didn't care if I scared them. I had to get them away from these people. These weren't grandmothers and aunts. They were vipers. I dragged the kids out to the car, ignoring the sisters watching from the window. As I buckled them in, I saw Rachel standing in the doorway, raising her wine glass in a mock toast. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely steer. The tears were blinding me. Maybe everyone would be better off if you just weren't here. The words echoed in my head. They bounced around my skull, mixing with the image of John's drug pipe and Jessica's threat. I was broke. My husband was an addict and a cheater. His mistress was stalking me. His family wanted me dead and was threatening to take my children. I pulled into a gas station parking lot and put the car in park. I buried my face in the steering wheel and screamed, a silent, guttural scream that tore at my throat. I was completely alone. But as I sat there gasping for air, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I was terrified it was another picture from Jessica or a text from John, but I looked. It wasn't a text, it was an email notification. Yes. Subject, FWD, property transfer, urgent signature required. It was forwarded from John's email. He must have been logged in on my iPad at some point and the sync was still active. I opened it. It was a legal document drafted by a notary. Transfer of title of property, 124 Maplewood Drive, our house. Transferee, Jessica Miller. I froze. He wasn't just refinancing the house. He wasn't just draining the equity. He was signing the deed over to her. He was giving her my house, the house my children slept in. The sadness evaporated. The desire to die that Rachel had tried to plant in my brain vanished. In its place, a cold, hard rage settled in. They wanted me to disappear. They wanted me to be the weak, broken victim who quietly faded away so they could play happy family with their junky son and his homewrecker girlfriend. No, I looked in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red. My face was blotchy, but the fear was gone. I wasn't going to die. I was going to fight. I wiped my face. I looked at my sleeping children. I'm sorry, I whispered to them. I'm sorry for the mess, but Mommy is going to fix it. Mommy is going to burn their world down. I put the car in drive. I wasn't going back to John and I wasn't going back to his parents. I was going to the police and then I was going to find out exactly who Jessica Miller really was, because if she wanted my life, she was going to have to come through me first. And as I merged onto the highway, I realised something. John's family thought they were the puppet masters, but they had forgotten one thing. A mother protecting her cubs is the most dangerous creature on the planet, and they had just poked the bear. The motel room smelled like stale cigarette smoke and lemon pledge. It was a stark contrast to the potpourri scented hell I had just escaped in Oakville, but to me it smelled like freedom, or at least survival. I had put the kids to sleep in the 2 double beds. The baby was finally down in the travel bassinet. The only light in the room came from the glow of my laptop screen. It was 3 a.m. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand, but adrenaline was coursing through my veins, keeping me wired. I wasn't crying anymore. I was hunting. I had the email. Transfer of title. I had the name, Jessica Miller. I started with a simple Google search. Nothing much came up at first. A few old social media profiles that hadn't been updated in years. She was careful. Ghosts usually are. But I knew where to look. In my previous life, before I was just John's wife, I worked in administration for a real estate firm. I knew that property records and court documents were public domain if you knew how to navigate the databases. I paid the $50 fee to access the Ontario Superior Court of Justice records. I typed in Jessica Miller. The screen populated and my blood ran cold. It wasn't just 1 or 2 hits. It was a list. Miller v. Henderson, divorce. Miller v. Henderson, restraining order. Bank of Montreal v. Miller, foreclosure. Miller v. Davies, divorce. Davies v. Miller, civil suit fraud. I clicked on the civil suit from 3 years ago. The plaintiff, a man named Michael Davies, had sued Jessica for misappropriation of funds and deceit. I read the summary. It was like reading a script of my own life, but with different character names. Michael claimed that Jessica had induced him to liquidate his retirement savings for a business investment that didn't exist. He claimed that she had isolated him from his family. He claimed she had faked a pregnancy to prevent him from leaving. Faked a pregnancy? Oh, I covered my mouth to stifle a gasp. The baby, the miracle child John was so desperate to protect. It was a playbook. She ran plays like a football coach. I kept digging. I looked up her mother. The prompt had mentioned her mother was involved. I found an obituary for Jessica's father from 10 years ago. It listed her mother as Brenda Miller. I ran Brenda's name. Brenda Miller had 2 convictions for check fraud in the early 2000s. They were a team, a mother-daughter grifter duo. They found weak men, men with assets but low self-esteem, men with saviour complexes like John, and they bled them dry. They didn't just want money, they wanted total destruction. They wanted the house, the car, or the soul. John wasn't a partner in this. He was a mark, a victim. But as I looked at the timestamp on the deed transfer in my inbox, my sympathy for him evaporated. Victim or not, he was the one holding the match that was burning my children's roof. My phone rang. It startled me so badly I nearly knocked my water bottle onto the laptop. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. It wasn't John. John was probably still comatose. I knew who it was. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful, frantic rhythm. I shouldn't answer. Any lawyer would tell me not to answer. I swiped right. Hello? My voice was steady, surprising even me. You're a hard woman to get rid of, Sarah. The voice was smooth, smoky. It sounded like expensive whiskey and bad decisions. It was the voice of of a woman who had never been told no in her life. Jessica, I said. The one and only, she replied. She sounded bored. John tells me you made quite a scene at his mother's house. Very dramatic, leaving with the kids in the middle of the night. It's not a good look for a stable mother. I know who you are, I said, cutting her off. I know about Michael Davies. I know about the fake pregnancy. I know about your mother's fraud convictions. There was a pause on the other end. A silence that stretched for 5 seconds. I expected her to hang up. I expected her to deny it. Instead, she laughed. A low, throaty chuckle. Research, she mused. Cute, but irrelevant. Michael was an abusive drunk, and my mother made some mistakes 20 years ago. You think a judge is going to care about ancient history when they look at your current situation? My situation? You're homeless, Sarah, she said, her voice dripping with mock pity. You're unemployed. Your husband has filed a police report claiming you kidnapped the children. The room swayed. He what? Kidnapping? She repeated, savouring the word. He came to the condo about an hour ago. He was distraught, crying. He told the police his mentally unstable wife took his children and disappeared. Since you have no fixed address and no income, and he has the support of his wealthy family, well, Child Protective Services isn't going to look favourably on you. You're lying, I whispered. He's an addict. I have pictures. Pictures of what? She countered. A pipe? In your house? Who's to say it isn't yours? John tested clean tonight. We made sure of it. My mind raced. They made sure of it. They had ways to pass drug tests, or maybe he hadn't used in 24 hours. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice cracking. You have the money. You have the condo. Why do you need to destroy me? Because you're in the way, she said simply. John is useful, but he's sentimental. He feels guilty about you. As long as you're around playing the victim, dragging the kids out for sympathy, he's going to be distracted. I need him focused. I need him to sign the papers. The house, I said. You want the house. It's a nice property, she admitted. Good market value. My mother thinks we can flip it for a quick 800 grand. That's a nice nest egg for our baby, don't you think? There is no baby, I spat. You're not pregnant. Does it matter? She asked chillingly. John thinks I am. That's all that counts. He's signing the transfer tomorrow morning. He thinks he's signing it over to a trust for the child. He doesn't read the fine print anymore. He just signs where I point. She was boasting. She was so confident in her control over him that she was telling me her entire plan. She was the puppet master and John was just a marionette with cut strings. I won't let you, I said. I'll go to the police. I'll show them the fraud. Go ahead, she challenged. But remember, Sarah, I have resources. I have money, your money, and I have John's family in my pocket. His mother loves me. She thinks I'm saving him from a shrew. Who are they going to believe? The rich, concerned grandmother and the loving new partner, or the frantic, homeless ex-wife screaming conspiracies? She paused and her voice dropped an octave. It became ice cold. Here is my advice. Sign the divorce papers John sends you. Take the pitiful alimony he offers and disappear. Because if you keep digging, if you keep trying to expose me, I won't just take the house. I'll take the kids. You stay away from my children, I screamed. John has rights, she said softly. And if John gets custody, I get custody. I'll be their stepmother. I'll be the one tucking them in at night. I'll be the one raising them. Imagine that, Sarah. Me raising your precious little babies. Click. She hung up. I stared at the phone. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The threat was so visceral, so specific. The idea of that woman, that sociopath touching my children, being in their lives, poisoning them against me. It broke something inside me, but it also fixed something. Fear has two reactions, flight or fight. I had fled. I had run to the motel. I had run to his parents. Now I was done running. I looked at the clock. 4 a.m. John was signing the transfer tomorrow morning. Tomorrow was today in 5 hours. I needed a lawyer, not just any lawyer. I needed a shark. I remembered a name, a friend of my father's from years ago, Mr. Sterling. He wasn't a family lawyer. He was a corporate litigator. He dealt with fraud. He dealt with dirty money. He was expensive and he was ruthless. I didn't have money, but I had leverage. I had evidence of a crime that went beyond a divorce dispute. I waited until 7 a.m. As soon as the sun cracked over the horizon, painting the dirty snow of the parking lot in shades of pink and grey, I called his office. I didn't care that it was before hours. I left a voicemail that I knew would get his attention. Mr. Sterling, this is Sarah. I have evidence of a multi-million-dollar real estate fraud involving forged, notarized documents and a pattern of predatory financial abuse. My husband is the victim, but I'm the collateral damage. I have the paper trail. I need an injunction now. Then I got the kids up. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I dressed them. I fed them granola bars from the vending machine. Where are we going, Mummy? My daughter asked, rubbing her eyes. We're going to stop a robbery, I said grimly. I drove to the house, my house, the one on Maplewood Drive. I parked down the street, hidden behind a neighbour's large hedge. I watched. At 9:30 a.m, a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. I recognised the driver. It was a notary public, a man named Greg, who I knew played golf with John's father. And then another car pulled up, a red convertible. Even in winter, it looked flashy and out of place. Jessica got out. Seeing her in the flesh was different than seeing her in photos. She was small, petite. She wore a white coat that looked pristine. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. She looked like an angel, but I knew the devil was in the details. She walked up the driveway like she owned it. She didn't knock. She used a key. My key. A few minutes later, the front door opened again. John stepped out. He looked like a ghost. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, shivering in the cold. He looked thin, gaunt. He wasn't the man I married. He was a shell. Jessica put her hand on his arm. She stroked his bicep. She whispered something in his ear and he nodded, a slow, robotic movement. He looked terrified. They were going to do it right there on the kitchen table. Hey, sir. I couldn't wait for Mr. Sterling. An injunction would take hours. The signature would take seconds. I turned to the back seat. Kids, stay here. Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone but Mommy. Do you understand? Yes, Mummy, they chorused, sensing the danger in my voice. I got out of the car. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have a plan. I just had the fury of a woman who had lost everything and refused to lose one thing more. I marched up the driveway. The snow crunched under my boots. They were in the living room now. I could see them through the bay window. The notary had papers spread out on the coffee table. John was holding a pen. Jessica was standing over him, her hand on his shoulder, guiding him. It was a tableau of coercion. I didn't ring the doorbell. I walked to the side of the house where I knew the patio door had a faulty lock. John had promised to fix it for 3 years. He never did. I jiggled the handle. It slid open. I stepped into the kitchen. The air was warm. It smelled like her perfume. I walked into the living room. Don't sign it, John. My voice rang out clear and loud. The three of them jumped. John dropped the pen. The notary looked up, startled. Jessica spun around. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second and then narrowed into slits. You, she hissed. How did you get in here? I live here, I said, stepping forward. My name is on the mortgage. My name is on the title. Sarah. John stammered. He looked at me, his eyes wide and dilated. He looked like a child caught stealing candy, but with the desperation of a man holding a gun to his own head. You shouldn't be here. You need to leave. I'm not leaving, I said. I looked at the notary. Greg, isn't it? If you notarise that document, I will have your licence revoked. I am the joint owner of this property. I do not consent to this transfer, and my husband is under the influence of narcotics. Greg looked at John. He looked at the trembling hands. He looked at the dilated pupils. He looked at Jessica, who was practically vibrating with rage. John, Greg said, closing his folder. Is this true? Does Sarah consent? She doesn't have to. Jessica snapped, her angel mask slipping completely. We have power of attorney. He signed it last week. I revoked it. I lied. I hadn't, but Greg didn't know that. I filed the revocation this morning with my lawyer, Mr. Sterling. Check your email, Greg. The name Sterling hung in the air. Greg knew him. Everyone in the legal world knew him. Greg stood up. I can't do this. Not today. This is too messy. Sit down, Jessica commanded. It was a bark, a command. Finish the paperwork. No, Greg said, backing away. Sort this out amongst yourselves. I'm not getting disbarred for your domestic drama. He grabbed his bag and bolted for the door. Silence descended on the room. It was just the three of us. Jessica turned to me. The look on her face wasn't human. It was pure, unadulterated malice. You stupid bitch, she whispered. It's over, Jessica, I said, my voice shaking but strong. I know about the fraud. I know about your mother. I know about the fake pregnancy. And now John knows. I looked at John. John, she's not pregnant. She did this to Michael Davies 3 years ago. Look it up. She's conning you. John looked at Jessica. Babe, what is she talking about? Jessica didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on me. John, she said calmly, throw her out. But she said, you're not. I said, Jessica turned to him and her hand moved fast. She slapped him hard across the face. Throw her out. It was the moment the puppet strings became visible. She didn't love him. She didn't even like him. She owned him. John touched his cheek. He looked at her with fear. Genuine, abject fear. And then he turned to me. Sarah, he said, his voice breaking, please just go. You don't know what she'll do. What will she do, John? I asked. What does she have on you? Jessica smiled. She reached into her pristine white coat pocket. She pulled out a phone. Not her phone. John's phone. I have everything, she said. The videos, the deals, the names of the people he bought the drugs from, the people who don't like it when their clients talk. If I send one text, Sarah, John doesn't just go to jail. John disappears. She took a step toward me. And you, she whispered, you have 3 beautiful children sitting in a car down the street. It would be a shame if something happened to the brakes on your way back to the motel. My blood froze. She knew. She had seen me park. She had seen the kids. This wasn't fraud anymore. This was a death threat. And as I looked into her dead, shark-like eyes, I realised I had made a terrible mistake. I thought I was fighting a mistress. I was fighting a monster. The air in the living room didn't just feel heavy, it felt radioactive. Jessica's threat hung between us. A promise of violence against my children, spoken with the casual indifference of someone ordering a coffee. It would be a shame if something happened to the brakes. I looked at John. He was still holding his cheek where she had slapped him. He was looking at the floor, shrinking into himself, a man reduced to a puddle of fear and addiction. He had heard her threaten his children. He had heard her threaten their lives, and he did nothing. That was the moment the last ember of my love for him finally extinguished. It didn't fizzle out slowly. It was doused by a bucket of ice water. The man I had spent 15 years with wasn't just sick, he was gone. In his place was a coward who would let a monster hurt his own flesh and blood rather than face his demons. You're right, Jessica, I said. My voice was eerily calm. It scared me more than my screaming had. I should go. Jessica smiled, a triumphant, predatory curl of her lips. She thought she had won. She thought fear had silenced me. Smart girl, she purred. Drive safe. I turned my back on them. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to claw her eyes out, to smash the room, to shake John until he woke up. But I had 3 children in a car down the street, and I was playing a longer game now. I walked out the front door. The winter wind hit my face, drying the sweat on my forehead. I walked down the driveway, my boots crunching on the snow, not looking back. I got into the car. Mummy, my daughter asked from the back seat, is everything okay? I turned the key in the ignition. I pumped the brakes. Once, twice, they held firm. Everything is going to be okay. I lied. We're going to see a friend. I didn't drive to the motel. I drove straight to the Glass and Steel Tower on Bay Street, where Mr. Sterling's firm was located. I didn't have an appointment, but I had the voicemail I had left him, and I had the desperation of a mother cornered. Mr. Sterling saw me. He was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. He listened as I laid it all out. The fraud, the drugs, the threats, the coercion. I showed him the photos of the pipe, the bank statements, and then I played him the audio recording. Because I hadn't just walked into that house blindly. I had turned on the voice memo app on my phone the second I stepped out of my car. Jessica's voice filled the plush office. I have everything. The videos, the deals. It would be a shame if something happened to the brakes. Mr. Sterling listened, his face unreadable. When the recording finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and tented his fingers. Sarah, he said, his voice low and dangerous, you aren't just getting a divorce. We are going to incinerate them. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal artillery. We didn't just file for divorce, we filed for an emergency ex parte order, a motion heard by a judge without the other party present because of immediate danger. The recording of the threat against the children was the smoking gun. The judge granted it immediately. Sole custody to me, a restraining order against Jessica Miller prohibiting her from coming within 500 feet of me, the children, or the property, an order freezing all of John's remaining assets assets pending a forensic accounting investigation and an order for John to vacate the matrimonial home immediately, accompanied by police escort. But Mr. Sterling didn't stop there. He knew about Jessica's past. He contacted the fraud unit. He handed over the evidence of the investors she had scammed in the past, linking it to the current attempt to transfer my house title. The police were interested, very interested. 2 days later, I sat in a police cruiser parked across the street from my house, our house. I watched as 2 squad cars pulled into the driveway. I saw the officers bang on the door. It took a long time for it to open. When it did, John stumbled out. He looked worse than before. He was wearing the same clothes. He looked confused, shielding his eyes from the sun. An officer handed him a stack of papers, the restraining order, the eviction notice. He started to argue. I could see him gesturing wildly. Then Jessica appeared behind him. She was screaming at the police. She was pointing a finger in an officer's face. Bad move. The officer grabbed her wrist. She pulled back. He spun her around. I watched, feeling a cold, dark satisfaction as they cuffed her. Not for the fraud, that would come later, but for assaulting an officer and resisting arrest. They put John in one car and Jessica in the other. As the cars drove away, John looked out the window. For a second, our eyes met across the distance. He saw me sitting in the cruiser. He saw the woman he had betrayed, the woman he had underestimated. He didn't look angry. He looked shattered. The aftermath wasn't a fairy tale. It was a slow, painful excavation of a life buried in rubble. I moved back into the house. It was a mess. It smelled like smoke and rot. There were holes punched in the drywall, wine stains on the carpet. It took me weeks to scrub the scent of her perfume out of the curtains. I found stashes of drugs hidden in the vents. I found pawn shop receipts for my jewellery. I found a journal John had kept, ramblings of a madman trying to justify his double life, pages filled with guilt and delusion. John's family imploded once the assets were frozen and the money stopped flowing. The support John's mother and sisters had offered him evaporated. They didn't want a broke, drug-addicted son sleeping on their pristine couches. They didn't want the scandal. Linda, my mother-in-law, actually had the audacity to call me a week after the arrest. Sarah, she said, her voice trembling with fake concern. We are so worried about John. He's in a shelter. How could you do this to him? I didn't do this, Linda, I said, standing in my kitchen holding my baby. You did. You enabled him. You encouraged him. You handed him the shovel, and now you're mad that he dug a grave. Don't call me again. If you do, Mr. Sterling will add harassment to the list of lawsuits we're preparing against you for aiding in the misappropriation of marital funds. I hung up and I blocked the number. The awakening didn't happen for John until 3 months later. I was in family court for a status hearing. John was there. He looked cleaner, having spent 30 days in a court-mandated rehab, but he looked old. His youth was gone, eaten away by the chemicals and the stress. He approached me during the recess. His lawyer tried to stop him, but he waved him off. Sarah, he said. His voice was raspy. I didn't step back, but I didn't step forward either. I stood my ground. John, I messed up, he whispered. It was the understatement of the century. I lost everything. Yes, I said it. You did. Is it true? He asked, looking at me with wet eyes. About Jessica? Which part? I asked. The fraud, the criminal record, or the baby? He flinched. The baby. There was no baby, John, I said softly. The police confirmed it. Medical records confirmed it. She was never pregnant. It was a leash, and you wore it willingly. He closed his eyes. A single tear leaked out. The realization hit him then, the weight of it. He had thrown away his wife, his 3 children, his home, his career, and his dignity for a phantom. For a lie told by a woman who would have sold him for parts if she could have. I want to come home, he sobbed. He actually fell to his knees right there in the courthouse hallway. Please, Sarah, I'll do anything. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Just let me come home. I looked down at him, the man I had loved since college, the father of my children. I felt pity, but I didn't feel love. You can't come home, John, I said, because that home doesn't exist anymore. You burned it down. But I love you, he begged. Oh, no, John, I said, shaking my head. You don't. You love the safety I provided. You love the way I managed your life. And now that you're alone and cold, you want your blanket back. But I'm not a blanket. I'm a person, and I deserve better. I walked away. I left him kneeling on the linoleum floor, weeping for a life he had murdered with his own hands. Epilogue. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the back porch of the house on Maplewood Drive. It's summer now. The snow is gone. The garden is blooming. I didn't sell the house. I kept it. I worked 3 jobs for a while. I took in a boarder and I fought the bank tooth and nail to restructure the mortgage. It was hard. There were nights I cried myself to sleep from sheer exhaustion. But it's mine. John is living in a basement apartment in Scarborough. He sees the kids on weekends, supervised visits only. He's trying to stay sober, but I see the shadows in his eyes. He is a haunted man, living in the wreckage of his own choices. Jessica is awaiting trial. It turns out I wasn't her only victim, just the one who fought back. The police found evidence of blackmail rings, identity theft and extortion. She won't be seeing the outside of her cell for a long time. And me, I'm tired. I have scars, emotional ones that might never fully heal. I have trust issues. I flinch when a phone rings late at night. But as I watch my 3 children playing in the sprinklers in the backyard, screaming with joy, unaware of how close they came to losing everything, I realise something. I am not the victim of this story. For a long time I thought I was. I thought I was the poor betrayed wife, the woman who was fooled. But I'm not. I'm the survivor. I'm the warrior who stood in the living room with a monster and didn't blink. I'm the mother who drove through the night to save her cubs. I looked at the empty chair next to me, the chair where John used to sit. I don't miss him. I miss the idea of him. But I've learned that ideas can't hold you when you cry, and ideas can't pay the mortgage. The sun is setting, casting a golden glow over the yard. My baby, now almost a year old, pulls himself up on my knee and looks at me with big, trusting eyes. Dada, he babbles. I smile at him, kissing his soft cheek. You've got mama, I whisper, and mama is enough. And for the first time in 2 years, I know it's true. This isn't the life I planned. It's not the fairy tale I thought I was living in 2015, but it's real, it's safe, and it's mine. So, to anyone listening who feels like they are drowning in a lie, who feels like they are trapped in a room with the lights off, open the door, check the phone, trust your gut. And remember, the only thing scarier than leaving is staying. This is Sarah, signing off.